Thank you.
Mr. Chuck wants to be term.
He's got 15 seconds.
Plenty of time.
Yeah. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the public who are not yet here with us. I'm going to go ahead and call the regular board meeting of Monday, April 8th to order at 4:30 p.m. Would our esteemed general manager care to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Hands over your hearts. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Lauren, roll call, please.
President Kuczynski is absent. Vice President St. Amon,
Present.
Director Boyd,
Present.
Director Ritora,
Present.
Director Griffin.
Present. Barely. Take him.
Posting of agenda declaration.
The agenda for today's regular board meeting was posted on Thursday, April 4th, 2024.
All right, thank you very much. Conflict of interest declaration.
Vice President St. Amon,
I do not have a conflict of interest, but that being said, I must inform you that I am an employee of the federal government. However, that being said, everything I say this evening and my opinions are mine and mine alone, who do not necessarily reflect those of my employer. Thank you.
Director Boyd,
None.
Director Griffin,
None.
Director Ritora.
None. Public questions and comments. We have no one on the streaming, and we have only our consultant here tonight and present. So
He's still allowed to talk.
is he? Is that extra?
No, no.
Are there any comments from the assembled public? No. Very good. Thank you,
Okay.
sir. All right.
Had his chance.
So I'm going to go ahead and close the open session and open the closed session. So the open session is closed at 4:32 p.m. and we'll reassemble at 4:40 in the other room. Thank you.
You may jot down the times for me,
Okay, so
just the highlight.
we'll
will be able to hear?
Yep.
So, what?
Let's
Brianna,
put the
hi.
Mics on
Well, there's
live.
a monitor in the way.
Oh, there we go.
Hey, we have everybody?
Very good.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and reopen the open session at 6:09 PM. All right. Very good.
Board met in a closed session and no action was taken that requires disclosure under the Brown Act.
All right, thank you, Jim. All right, public questions and comments. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the board on any matter not on the agenda and over which the board has jurisdiction. However, please understand that no action may be taken by the board of directors on any item not appearing on the agenda. Non-agenda speakers are asked to limit their presentation to 5 minutes. Public and questions and comments on items listed on the agenda will be accepted at any time the item is brought forth for consideration by the board. When you're recognized, please state your name and address for the record. Do we have any public comments or questions? Okay, is there anyone online that's indicating they'd like to make a comment or have a question? Nope. Okay, very good. Item 9, current business and committee reports, consent calendar. Do I have a discussion on the minutes or the accounts payable discussions?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments? Then let's go ahead and call for a vote, please. Thank you. All right, the motion passes with 4 yeses from the directors in attendance this evening. Administration Executive Committee, we have a draft sick leave policy. George, you want to tackle that?
Okay, in the admin exec committee, we presented the committee with our draft changes to the sick leave policy. I believe these were mostly based on changes to the legal code, correct, Lauren? And there were no objections and there was a recommendation by the committee to send to the full board for approval. Any discussions or questions from other board members who were not present?
Can you highlight the issues that were fixed or addressed?
I probably would defer to Lauren or somebody who actually knows what that is, but yes, I'm sure we can.
So the changes included mainly who you could use sick time for. An extension of the family. It's the child, biological, adopted, foster. It just extended who you can use sick leave for, as well as you can limit one designated person per employee to use sick leave for. And the amount that they can receive in sick leave annually. However, the district already gives its employees 96 hours, so we're well above what's required by the state.
I think there was another provision that if you were an employee who was someone let go and then you were reinstated after within 1 year period, that you get to reclaim the
The sick leave.
sick leave that you did not either get bought out or otherwise compensated for.
Correct.
So that was the one thing I remember. And I believe these were all driven by essentially changes to state law. So I think it would be pretty
There
rough
was
for us to say no.
Theys and theirs in there that were changed as well.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. I'm good with it and would make a motion to approve. I would just ask that the general manager perhaps consider, I don't know if this is appropriate for us or not, but there's a leave donation program that they've had over on the base for decades for people who have more leave than they use annually. And it may be something we want to add into our draft leave policy.
I believe they have that here. We have
They-
we have
oh,
a
sorry.
form of that here already. Is
Okay.
that correct? Yes. So there have been employees who have been, actually, I believe we have an employee who was sick now, and then some people have actually donated
Awesome.
time to them. And so there's a formal policy to do that.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Show my ignorance, but I'm glad
Nope,
we do.
it's a fantastic question. It's great that we have that policy.
Yeah, absolutely. I would move to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay, do we have any comments or questions from the public? Hold off on your votes, directors. We have
It's not- Hello?
Go ahead, caller. Name and residence.
Yeah, this is Renee Westerlust in Ridgecrest. I just want to know, when you draft these policies for personnel, do you have to go by some state guidelines or federal guidelines? You just don't whip these up out of nothing, right?
That is correct. We have to go by state and federal guidelines.
Yes, and if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, Lauren, these changes were in fact driven by changes to state regulations. Is that correct?
To affect 2024.
Yeah, so all these changes that were put into our policy were in fact driven directly by changes at the state level.
Okay, so you just found out about them in the last year, or few months or something, and now is the time to update them, correct?
They just went into place this year, and we are modifying the book to accommodate those changes in the law.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's all I
Thank you.
wanted.
Is there anyone else? No? All right, then let's go ahead and close discussion and you go ahead and vote. The motion passes unanimously for the directors who are present. It's very nice, I must say, not to have a lag on the communications.
Yeah, it has sped up, hasn't it?
All right, salary survey. Who likes to tackle that?
Yes.
So as I believe you're all aware, the district goes out annually and looks at 17 other water agencies to compare the positions that the district currently has. We look at job description and job duties, try to find the closest match and then compare the salaries using a cost of living factor to adjust for where the city is compared to Ridgecrest. And this is the summary sheet of what we found.
Okay.
If you need, that has a full report that goes with it. If you need to see that, it's available for you upon request.
And is this just an informational presentation this evening, or are you expecting movement
That-
from the board?
We would like if possible, the board to accept it. The colors on here, if you see a green, that means that the position is currently under the 5% that we allow, either plus or minus, and needs to be adjusted up. There are no blues, which would indicate that it was 5% over and would need to be frozen. So you can see all of our entry levels need to be adjusted up, and there is one position that needs to be adjusted up as far as maximum.
Which generally probably would make sense given the inflationary environment we're in today.
Okay. Are there any questions or comment from the board?
I don't see anything that jumps out at me as being wrong. I'm glad to see that we're pretty much consistent in recognizing our employees' values. So am I misreading this? Am I concluding from this that there's no adjustments that we need to make to the employee salaries to keep up with these salary ranges?
No, we have to make it.
Almost all the minimums or entry levels would have to be adjusted up, and there's
Okay.
one max that would be adjusted.
Okay, I was
Ah,
reading. the
right,
colors.
green column on the left. We have to bring the base up
Yes.
and the starting salaries up, and then the
Okay.
maximum salaries, with one exception, don't need to be touched.
Correct.
Okay.
So there's only one change, really.
Well, the floor, the entry level salary for virtually everyone needs to come up by some variable.
There's only one change that would probably affect the employees now, because there's nobody who's at the entry level,
Okay,
but for future hiring, that would make a difference.
okay, thank you for that.
Could be a
So the current
potential,
employees are already,
Okay, all right.
there could be one
That's what I was-
potential for 10,000,
okay,
a difference, and the rest would all just be entry level if we hired somebody else.
okay, thank you.
Where they're making more than McDonald's when they start. Because of our great governor.
I know the way that keeps going up.
Anybody make one McDonald's
No.
these days?
I don't. Okay. Are there any, for the folks who are present, are there any questions or comments? All right, we have a caller online. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, this is Renee Westerlusk. I wanted to know when you adjust these salaries up, I assume it will impact water rate. It's what the district charges. to cover all these increases in salary?
Can I answer? Renee, there's not an increase in anybody's salary except for one person on this chart. And that would be a minor increase. This doesn't change any current salaries. Nobody in the back's gonna get, like you see the admin, a 10%. That's not gonna be a 10% raise. They're gonna make what they're currently making unless, even if they're topped out. It just changes the entry level. If we were to hire somebody new, it would raise that level up to where we hired somebody. So it's not going to be an increase to the district currently at all. And if somebody left and we hired them, it would actually be a cost savings to the district because we were getting somebody at an entry level price.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Is there anyone else online that would like to make a comment or have a question? Okay, I have a motion and a second. I'll go ahead and call for the vote.
Right.
Mal was the first
Yep.
and Chuck was the
I
second.
second it.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously with the directors present. All right, moving on to item D, Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority.
Guess that's me, huh?
Mm.
We had a special meeting on March 29th. The previous meeting was postponed due to lack of a quorum. I guess a couple directors were sick. So it was a relatively short meeting. There was some discussion when it started out on a letter that was written. I made a comment about the letter and I'm sure we'll discuss that a little later. But I did comment on that. But as far as action items that were taken, there was a motion to do a cost increase through Provost and Pritchard. And one was for BLM and the other was actual for pipeline development costs for a new section of pipeline that they decided that they need to now come out and say we need
Okay.
to meet the supply for the existing pipeline. So I did vote no on the pipeline on the awarding that contract or any more research on that. I did vote yes as far as moving forward BLM paying them for their study just to get that done. But that was there. And then the other two items that we addressed were two shallow well mitigations. We had some conversation on it. I'm still struggling in my head, but how it got approved, but they approved 250-year-old wells to give them an existing set value of their well and then also pay to deepen the wells.
Sure.
I asked the question to Stetson Engineering if the earthquake had not happened because it showed in the data that one of the wells, that casing had actually broke and fractured in the earthquake. So I asked if the earthquake had not happened, would that well still be producing? His answer was yes. Neither one of the wells went dry. They were the water table in that area, which I explained to them by the district protecting the small pumpers in the valley and the smartness of the district directors back in 2005, that we spread the pumping to the southwest and they actually seen an increase in that area where those wells were at and the water table was actually rising. And if it would have actually been caused by the well being low, that it would happen in 2005 when the water was its lowest level. And now it's actually increased by 8 to 10 feet. So it was hard for me to justify them saying it was due to the declining water table. But so I made a motion that we should, because I don't mind helping somebody out. I just don't want to pay for somebody's well if it's not due to shallow well or declining water table. And I don't think that they proved that in any way. Their argument was if the water level goes below the perforations, the well's going to be finished because it's going to get air, it's going to rust. And that was their justification for it.
Okay.
But that would have started long ago, not now. And it wasn't because of anything that we're doing currently. So I made a motion to award them the value of their well now, which was 10,000 on one and I think 20,000 or something on the other. That motion died due to lack of second. So Director Heyman, I believe, made a motion, or maybe it was Director Peters. I'm not sure. One of them made a motion to award the full amount. So they did that to both wells, and I think one was 37,000 and one was 31,000 or so
Okay.
that they awarded. So
So,
Um,
so the technical advice that they received regarding what happened to the wells, I saw a reference to Garrison had made an assessment. Was there something from, their technical team as well?
they gave a presentation and they said due to declining water levels, that's what caused the well
That was
to
Stetson?
not
or-
produce. And that was that was Stetson's
Okay.
approach also
Hmm.
from Jeff.
Thanks.
Okay,
So, and basically that was it. We do have a new, meeting in 2 days. This Wednesday, there is another GA meeting. So if you're out and about, come join it and listen in.
okay. All right, thank you for that report. Public questions and comments?
Judy Decker. Well, as you must have noted, Chuck, we were not at the meeting due to prior commitments. But I would have got up and strongly objected to your comments. The one well, the Byerly well, is literally a stone's throw from the Stark Street well. And if you recall, a couple of years ago, that was on the table for the GA to mitigate, and they gave them a token amount of money. These wells are dropping at a rate of 1 to 2 feet a year. There was, I believe, something like 7 feet of water left in the Byerly well, or it could have been the other one. The other well is located just east of Jack's Ranch Road on Las Flores, in an area where the district has pumped since 1970. And I believe the report from Stetson was, and I'm not sure my number is correct, but it was large, that the water level had dropped 62 feet in the intermediate, what used to be called the intermediate area, due to over pumping. Part of that original drop was not only due to the water district, but due to the Navy and Searles Valley Minerals. So you have to accept the fact that the water level is dropping, and it's now affecting domestic wells.
All right, thank you for your comments. Are there any other comments? Okay,
Can I add one other thing that was talked about at the GA meeting that I think was important?
yes, please.
And this had to do with an additional, I'm going to say approximately 10 miles of pipeline that was discussed at the board meeting that is now, that we are now aware is needed, not today or not in the initial build out of the pipeline, but the pipeline where it's connected at California City cannot convey the amount of water that it's designed to convey. We're going to say that's about 50%. Maybe it can convey 3,000 acre feet because California City uses water there, and there's this restriction where they're currently building it. If they wanted to build the pipe out to full capacity to describe the project fully, you have to include this additional 10 miles of pipe. Not saying that we should support that, but I think it's an important fact that they've now come out and they're including it in their NEPA and CEQA analysis, because it adds a significant cost to the overall long-term project, which is the imported water pipeline project that they're proposing. So we are going to need our consultant to actually at least attempt to consider, based on the flow rates, when they think that might be necessary and how that cost affects the cost of imported water to the valley in the long run up to 2070. So I think that was an important thing for them to discuss. They're putting in their NEPA documentation. I know that Chuck did not vote in favor of all the additional cost to do that, and that's certainly appropriate. But certainly I think it was worth noting that there is this, I have no idea what this additional 10 miles of pipeline is going to cost, but I expect this can be fairly expensive because a lot of it goes through incorporated city areas. So it's not going to be cheap.
No.
I have a question on that just occurred to me. So the dialogue that's been going on about the availability of water in that area has been with whoever is in charge of the initial source of water. Do they need to start talking with somebody else to make sure that the water near the Mojave, uh,
It's all part of
is
the
there any-
AVEX system, so.
one
I've-
person can speak for that?
I believe so. I've seen different ways that's been written in some of the GA stuff there. I think there was one report I read where they said like, oh, that's part of AVEX problem and they'll have to build the pipeline. But now I think they're saying that the GA would have to, or whoever's paying for the pipeline, I guess that would be us, those that would use it would have to pay for it. So I haven't really, once again, understanding how much things are going to cost and what the long-term costs are going to be is a critical factor for this board ultimately to decide, their position with respect to the pipeline. And this is another piece that's going to cost a lot of money and it needs to be factored into our consideration at some point. So it was good for them to discuss that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
On a slightly different issue, um, uh, the GA put out a schedule about 3 or 4 months ago regarding the updated GSP. And according to their schedule, there should have been, or there should be, 4 chapters, draft versions of 4 chapters of the GSP out at the end of March. I looked on the internet and both the GSP and the GA websites and I couldn't find them. They may be there, but I couldn't find them. Also, at the end of this month, there's supposed to be 2 more chapters out. So if they're behind schedule, I guess I would like to know, and Chuck, if you would follow up on, how are they doing relative to the schedule? And I think the public has a right to know, what they're doing and what those draft chapters look like. So I'd like to see them tell the public where those can be located. And if they're just behind, they just need to acknowledge they're behind.
I'll ask
But
that. It's in the agenda in the general manager or the water manager report. So
Okay.
it lists it. So I will ask the question where they're at.
Just
where they
ask,
can be
where
located.
are they and where could the public get them to look at them?
Okay.
Another item, is it came up at the plant and equipment meeting, that with the event of the consolidation with Dune 3, we should be getting some additional allocation of water from the replenishment fee. So I would like to see that followed up on, not this meeting, but,
Stan, I may have an
sure
answer
that
for
it
that
doesn't
one.
slip through the crack.
So I got that question came up in a meeting and staff from the GA responded and said that their proposed way ahead with consolidations is to look at the historical pumping at the consolidations and to grant the district an additional amount equal to what the average pumping is over some time period.
Yeah.
That's sort of, that at least,
That would sound fair.
yeah, that's,
Yeah, it just takes an awful long time. I know we haven't actually gotten started on Dune 3, but on the other hand, administratively, it takes sometimes more time to get that done than it does the actual work. So,
and I also wanted to comment on your first question, and that is, in theory, I'm a member of the Policy Advisory Committee. I went to one meeting. There has not been a scheduled meeting since then. I'm not sure why. I have another member here in the room, but certainly my understanding in my first and only meeting of the Policy Advisory Committee for the GA was that the Policy Advisory Committee would get to review these chapters, and we have seen nothing at this point in time. I don't know how to explain that.
I will definitely ask that question. And then also, Stan, there is a consolidation presentation going to be given this Wednesday too. I noticed in the.
okay,
agenda.
I'll be listening.
Yes, I'll be listening. The only other thing I want to say about the meeting was Director Heyman asked, I had made the implication that the district was not in any way against the Navy or the Navy pumping. And then also they indicated that we were against the small pumpers, de minimis users. So I would like to address that, and I told him I would address that, but I think I should do it during the adjudication part when we talk about, it, since that's what it relates to and ties in. So
Okay.
I would like to comment about that during that part.
All right, very good.
And just so board members know, we will be co-presenting on consolidations with the GA on Wednesday. So Renee is
Oh.
putting together, so there's a sort of a combined presentation on both. There'll be several slides that they present. Then we're going to present the consolidations that we're planning on doing, and then they're going to finish up with some other details. So we're jointly working, and we'll have a meeting tomorrow to make sure that's all coordinated properly.
Great.
All right. Were there any additional comments from the board, questions?
No, no.
All right, how about the public? Anyone online? Okay, then we will go from the Groundwater Authority to comprehensive adjudication. But before Jim gets into that, I have a few comments about some recent publications. So in the last couple of months, we've seen some encouraging signs from the Groundwater Authority that indicate a warming of our relationship. But recent publications have intentionally and maliciously maligned the water district and its reputation and reported falsehoods and opinions as facts. And I urge our supervisors of the various counties and our city council to be cautious when staff presents you with that sort of material or intends to publish it. They're damaging the relationship between the other members of the Groundwater Authority and the water district. And you are being ill-served by your staff when that's allowed to happen. All right, Jim, thank you.
Okay, so there was a court hearing on March 22nd. Hello?
It's Gremlins.
Okay, so there was a court hearing held on March 22nd. And the purpose of the hearing was to hear the district's request for a phase one trial. The district, through its papers, requested that the court set a trial on two matters. One was the Federal Reserve right, and the other was the amount of groundwater in storage. The court agreed and set the trial for the Federal Reserve right. I believe it's sometime in April 24th. I don't have April 2025. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact date. Vice President Singham alluded to a newspaper article. I don't have the article in front of me, but it implied that the district was anti-Navy and that the intention was for the district to somehow curtail the Navy's pumping. That has never been the case. And in fact, during the hearing, the Department of Justice representing the Navy stood up and agreed with the court that that was an appropriate time for the trial on the Federal Reserve right. And I don't want to go back too far, but the district has always said in explaining the purpose for filing the adjudication, one of the primary purposes is this is the only way that you can get a court determination of the amount of the Federal Reserve right, which is critical if you're going to allocate the remainder of the water rights. So the setting of the trial for the Federal Reserve right, that's what the district has intended all along. We were hoping to include groundwater and storage. It wasn't to mine the basin as was suggested. It's just that much like safe yield, the amount of groundwater in storage, it's a necessary component to understand the basin that you live in, and to also try to formulate a physical solution. The judge, he denied it without prejudice. I believe he just needs a little bit more education to understand the importance and why it needs to go there. Along those lines, when the court didn't grant groundwater and storage, Searles Valley at the end of the hearing stood up and advised the court that they would be moving at the June, we have a hearing in June 14th. Searles will be moving to request a phase two trial. That would be safe yield and potentially groundwater and storage. So from the water district, we perceive that as a very good hearing. We're moving forward. We finally have a trial date set, notwithstanding some parties trying to continue to delay the the trial. So we're going to continue on and move forward. One aspect, initial disclosures are going to be due in about 45 days. Briefly stated, an initial disclosure is when every party that's involved with the groundwater adjudication presents a summary of their water use, I believe, over the past 10 years. Interestingly, we expect to have a lot of clarity with respect to what the Navy's going to be contending when we receive their initial disclosure. So that's also a positive step. It's certainly necessary to move the case forward for everyone else. The last thing I want to say, this is really directed to the people out in Ridgecrest, that last month in March, you may have noticed there were some people canvassing the city and either posting signs on property or hanging door hangers, advising them yet again that the water district had filed an adjudication, telling them how they could respond to get involved with it. And we have in fact completed service on that. And the last answer, the last date to file an answer is the latter part of May, depending upon when the service was. You may recall that there's a $1,000 fee to file an answer. The court has waived that once again. So if anybody out there wants to get file an answer and get involved in the lawsuit, now's the time. It won't cost you anything other than your time. Not related to the adjudication, but I'll say it anyway. At the June 14th hearing, it's presently scheduled. I don't know if it's going to go forward, but the groundwater authorities preliminary injunction against Mojave to prevent them from pumping unless and until they pay the replenishment fee is set to be heard on June 14th. That is all I have.
Well, great, thank you. Director Griffin.
I just had a quick question for Jim.
Yes.
Anything mentioned about Cyril's Valley, or was that there's nothing been in court on that on injunction or anything, correct?
Hello?
Can you?
Actually, the judge asked that. The judge was inquiring whether the GA would be filing a similar motion against Searles Valley. They indicated that it was under consideration. I think we all understand it's a different ballgame, at least the way I see it, to file that motion against Mojave versus Searles Valley. But I think at some point they will in fact file against Searles if they continue not to pay the fee.
That's just my concern. I don't want to see they go to that and have them shut off. As far as what happened, I think as directors, we have an obligation to the citizens. I got asked by two different directors, at the GA, that talk is cheap and they don't see any public output from the board stating that we don't want to hurt the Navy or we don't want to hurt small pumpers. And we're not interested in hurting small pumpers or taking their water rights. And I think that's definitely my opinion. I believe it's the opinion of everybody here on this board. We're not trying to affect the small pumpers. That's why we requested that their fee be waived. But we had to include everybody because it was a comprehensive adjudication to get the Navy's water right established, because that was first and foremost. And it's not about saying the Navy, hey, you guys, it's 4,000 acre feet. We only want you to have 1,000. We want the Navy to have whatever their allocation is. And our attorney said that to the judge. The judge flat out asked the attorney, what if the Navy's allocation is everything? And he said, so be it. Whatever it is, that's what the Navy needs. That's what the Navy needs. And I believe that's the opinion of the district. And I want to get that out there to the public. We're not here to take somebody's water, right? I got the question posed, well, what if the de minimis user's 2 acre feet and we only use 1 acre feet? We've heard it said that the district wants to take the other acre feet of water. That is not the case. And we're not here to take people's water away. We just have to go through this adjudication to get the Navy's water right established so we can figure out a total allocation table. So
Okay, thank you.
I think we need to get that out there.
All right.
Yeah, and a clarifying point there is the GA even recognizes and has stated publicly that they cannot make water right decisions. The only way we can get this done is to go through a court. And of course, the Navy's premier, I believe, demand or water right, I'll use that word, which it's not been defined, but the Federal Reserve right that they're going to claim, we just need to know how much that is, because it's been assumed before by the GA what it was, but the Navy never actually told them what it was. So we're going to find out,
Yeah.
which is good.
Correct.
And then we can start from there and go forward. Okay, what's left over? And you can make further decisions about how much of the pie can be divided up with the other users.
Go ahead.
And to classify an adjudication as an attack on the Navy's right is not right. We've already been through this, and the Navy's been through this process 29 or 30 times in prior adjudications. This is pretty much standard procedure in how you quantify the Navy's water right. And I should also say that the GA and particularly Phil Hall likes to throw out that Mojave Pistachio is the litigation partner of the district. The district doesn't have a litigation partner. We're in it to protect the customer, the ratepayers of the district, and the community as a whole, because that benefits everybody. But to say that we are partners with Searles or Mojave or Meadowbrook, that's not right. We've been very open that we are working with those three parties. We have a common interest, and that common interest is determine what the true safe yield is, what the true amount of groundwater and storage is, because yes, there is doubt. We do not have the confidence that in the GSP numbers, and so we're doing it ourselves, and we intend to present that evidence at the adjudication. That's all I've got.
I've got a question regarding the initial discovery. That was sort of a third thing that came up at the trial that we were trying to push. What I'm curious about is, how are those people being noticed that the initial discovery has been whatever is required?
They after every hearing, everybody that's appeared in the case receives a written notice. If they don't, they're also advised of when the next hearing is going to be. There's always some type of a written order coming out of a court hearing stand. So if you're involved in the case, you will receive notice, and probably multiple times of a hearing.
Okay, so everybody that has responded to date will get a letter saying that this has been done?
We'll get it to order.
From the court?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Like a
Okay,
pleading.
good.
Were there any other questions or comments from the directors? All right, public comment.
Yes, Judy Decker. I want to tell you, Jim, that not everyone who sent in their required form and who are listed on the sheets that come from Murphy and Everett's are getting contacted and receiving the knowledge that they're supposed to be. In fact, if you recall at the last meeting, I brought the notice that was stuck in our fence. We got the notice because they didn't think we were on the list, but in fact, we are on the list on page 3, line 21. We have talked to a few other people and they haven't received anything. And this is a concern. I mean, you have lots of people listed that are either businesses or they really have a stake in the game in that way, but you have all the private citizens who have parcels of land and are well owners who they don't know what to do. I'm not going to go through and call them up and say, are you getting the information? But I know I talked to someone last night and they had received nothing,
Well,
and they're on the list.
I'm not gonna argue with you, because there are going to be instances, I would imagine. I will tell you this, that we served mailers on over 20,000 parcel. Every parcel landowner received a packet from the district. After that, we went to the court and we said, some people didn't get it. Is there a different way that we can try to serve these people? We went to social media, we went to publication, we went and we did additional steps to serve these people.
I'm
A ye-
talking
a ye-
about people who got
I
it and
am too.
replied.
Let me finish. Then we had to go back and confirm which persons received that mailer, which gave them instructions on what to do. And if we could not confirm that that property received that mailer, we were required to go out, either we put a hanger or we actually physically posted that notice on their property. And we did that in excess of over 5,000 parcels after serving everything. I received every notice, every order, and there's a proof of service indicating every person that was mailed to. And everybody that is in that has made an appearance in that case is on that list. Is everybody, are all the 20,000 parcel owners going to get something, or I don't know, but I know that we've complied with what we're required to do.
Okay,
And,
thank
and,
you.
and we continue to tell people, go to the district website. We have an entire page set up for taking you step by step. We have a form answer for them to, all they have to do is put their name, address, and sign it, and they've made an appearance for free. We've told people this time and time again. I'm telling you again.
All right, thank you. We have, good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Mike Neal. Chuck already took some of the words out of my mouth based on what he said here and what was published in the last news review from April 8th, which was put out to the public, but I'm just going to repeat just some short sections of that. First, I want to start with the usual obfuscations of Phil Hall and how he tries to use the water district on a regular basis as some kind of a whipping post. I'm not sure what he ever thinks he's managing to do here, but all he really ever does is get ill will from the public and the water users in this valley who are getting charged lots and lots of money by the GA. So he made a long-winded statement, and at the end he's supposedly talking to people we're just talking about, people who were getting notice in the small pumpers, who now he's trying to make like they're never going to be represented in court. They're going to lose all their rights. He said, your water rights are going to be determined in this adjudication. They will be determined without you there if you do not step in now. I believe the answers for those that have yet to be served or have more recently been served within about 60 days are probably about 45 days from now. And I'm sure he went on and on. He likes to talk a lot when he's trying to prove a point. Was reported, Director Griffin's response was, in short, the water district has no intention of affecting any small pumpers' water rights. I think that should make the point clear enough. However, of course, the usual tag team situation then went on later on where Scott Heyman pipes in and says, while I hear you and heard the water district state that that's not our intent, I see no objective data being printed in the courts or public or factual statements or letters that would solidify or confirm that. So that's where it stands. Talk is talk. So if you read the statements and think about it for just a second, he's basically saying, well, Director Griffin is lying to everybody. What he's saying is just huff and puff, and it doesn't mean anything. It's just a bunch of talk. Well, got news from Mr. Heyman. We're getting tired of hearing him back up Phil Hall and all their attempts at obfuscations about what's going on in truth about this water situation. And appreciate the water district's stand of integrity. And I hope Mr. Griffin continues to keep his cool up there when he gets side-slapped and attacked in these, just wrong fashions. I would like to point out also, and this has been brought up long ago and bears repeating, that unless you could prove me wrong, I understand that the Navy is really not Navy base per se, that they are leasing the land from the BLM and that they are not a Federal Reserve. And therefore, they don't actually have this overarching Federal Reserve water right. So they should stand in this adjudication as just, another water user, another water pumper. And clearly, they need to get the amount of water they need to get. And and they've been trying to reduce their water usage and so forth and so on. But to say that they have a Federal Reserve water right, I believe is an incorrect statement. It's the incorrect position. And it puts them up here on top of everybody else, and everybody else gets to fall underneath. And it's like, the Navy can have everything it wants. If it wants all the water in the valley, it gets all the water in the valley because, we got Federal Reserve water rights. Well, I believe actually that's not correct, and they stand in line just like everybody else. And of course, we've just proven, I think, with 6 separate studies that all pretty much agree together, at least on averaging out the results basis, that there's a whole lot more usable water in this valley than the GA ever said from day one, and they still continue to make the false claim, and they won't look at the new data. So the whole situation is way less drastic than most people in this valley have ever been led to believe for 6, 7 years going on now. And so this should be a simple issue in the court. Everybody ought to be able to go in there without this kind of junk going on at the GA meeting, where the only funding source for the GA, i.e. the water district, continues to get slapped in the head by the other members who aren't even paying anything towards it.
All right, thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Is there anyone online? All right, go ahead, caller.
Yes, this is Renee Westelusk. I just want to express my opinion. I don't see that a larger amount of water in storage guarantees more potable water or guarantees any kind of quality of more available water, because we don't know the quality of the water. And I still don't see the value of determining the Navy's water rights, because what's at stake is the amount of water allocations. And right now, the Indian Wells Valley Water District, the Indian Wells Valley Water District currently has the largest allocation and has the most to lose in this adjudication if big ag such as Mojave Pistachio or commercial industry such as Searles Valley Mineral ends up with a slice of the water rights. There'll be less water for the water district customers, and then we'll end up having to pay more. And I am skeptical of the new data. I haven't had time to even look at it, but the problem I have, I want to know if it's been vetted, confirmed as the gold standard for measurement of groundwater storage, across the state, because unless the state of California or some other major water agency on the federal level, like the USGS, how can we be sure that this new data is accurate at all and really has relevant information compared to the way they've been measuring storage and groundwater in the past? Those are my comments. Thank you.
Would you like me to answer that?
Well, I would say to start off that the groundwater paper prepared by the technical working group has been vetted more than the GSP has been vetted. It was performed by 6 independent, well-known engineering hydrogeologist firms throughout the state. And I think you should read it, Renee, before you ask these questions, because it's a very good report. It's based on the latest and best science available from the AEM technology that was not used and is being used throughout the state now. It's got all of the latest information and technologies that were available.
Yeah, I'd like to just add to what Jim said. I mean, interestingly, the use of the AM data, which is the helicopter that flies over and maps the basin, was, I believe, first used here and has now been adopted by the state. And I've spent a lot of time looking at the amount of flyovers they've done throughout the state, and they're essentially using that technology that was pioneered here and advocated here across the state in all the critical areas. And so that's what backs up the science that we have in our storage paper. I think it's significant to note that, as Jim said, that the science that we used here was ultimately adopted by the state as the gold standard for all basins, and I think that's significant.
I'd like to address the comment about the water district having the most to lose in an adjudication. That statement is to ignore what might happen to our neighbors in the Searles Valley should county staff get their way with the GSP. The mineral company in Searles Valley has stated they cannot afford to pay the replenishment fee, that they'll go out of business. If they go out of business, the town is done. 700 of our neighbors in Ridgecrest will lose their jobs. The town of Ridgecrest will lose revenue from the people who are here, who will lose those jobs and will likely have to leave the valley. And on top of which, that chemical plant produces strategically valuable minerals, the only other source for which is in the People's Republic of China. So this is far more complicated than the water district might get a lower allocation. It might, and we've always understood that. But we are interested in getting to the facts of the situation and having a proper allotment made, not concerned about our own personal bottom lines. All right, thank you for your comments. All right, one last comment.
It's a question. A few weeks ago, there was an article in the News Review written by Rodney Steffader about the Court of Appeals decision. My question is, do you know, is Mojave Pistachios taking their case to the State Supreme Court?
Yeah, I believe they already have, Judy. They filed a petition with the Supreme Court.
Okay.
It's my understanding that they're supposed to have a decision back sometime mid to the latter part of May, which is why the court put the hearing on for the 14th on the GA's motion against the Mojave Pistachio. So we're waiting to hear from the Supreme Court.
Thank you.
Jim, I have a quick question for you. When the Groundwater Authority attempted to bring all of the de minimis pumpers under their legal umbrella in the adjudication, there was a negative response from the individual pumpers, was there not?
Well, there was a negative response by some de minimis smaller pumpers, but there was an objection by every other party, including the Navy, citing potential conflicts of interest between trying to represent a class of landowners that is different, have different interests than the GA, potentially the city. So, and that was a class action, the request for the class action. We believe that by doing that second round of posting that we did eliminates the need for class action. And it should be noted that there's 29 or 30 adjudications. I don't believe class counsel was appointed in one adjudication, and that was the Antelope Valley adjudication, which is entirely different than the Indian Wells Valley Basin. Every other adjudication that occurred in this state, there was not class counsel appointed for the smaller pumpers. And the reason is because they're always taken care of, just like we're going to do. We can't tell you the exact plan, but the small pumpers will be taken care of in this basin, notwithstanding statements made by the GA to the contrary.
Okay, thank you. All right. Then let us move on then to item F, General Manager and Staff Update.
Oh geez, who's supposed to give this report? All righty. Let's get on some data. So in March, we produced 107,432,000 gallons. We consumed 83,174,000 gallons, about, and as the breakout you see, 11% commercial, 85% residential, 4% other. I want to correct some things I said at the last meeting. I think Renee put some data in there. The loss, we estimated at 5,646,000 gallons, and I believe her latest report said that almost all of that was due to meter inaccuracy, and only a tiny portion of that was due to flushing and theft. So I wanted to make sure I pointed that out, because I think in the last meeting I may not have spoken entirely correctly, and thank you, Renee, for getting me on board. No injuries for, I should say, March 2024. Sorry about that typo. Now we're back to conservation. You know, it's interesting in a meeting where we spend a lot of time talking about people who have wells individually and people who are customers of the water district, you know, and I will tell you, if it were not for the water district being here, and if we were not serving the large group of customers that we do, and everybody had their own well, can you imagine what a mess this valley would truly be in without the water district here, metering, promoting conservation, doing all the right things? These conservation numbers that we show, this 43% reduction since 2007, you know, I don't think that's necessarily true of people who have individual wells. We have no beef with them, but I just want to point out in that context that the water district, it's in and of itself serves such a valuable purpose in the valley of, you know, using the economics of water and promoting conservation and doing all the right things so that we are in so much better a position than we would have been without the water district. So congratulations and thank you to all the people that have worked here over the decades to make that happen. So that's my conservation report for this month. The date of what? Oh, since
2007.
2007, we were at 9,198 acre feet total pumping in 2007. In 2023, we were at 5,224 acre feet. That's a 43% reduction by customers of the water district. And, you know, as I said, I think that just shows the value of what the water district brings to the valley.
And a reduction at a time when the population has been increasing, albeit slowly.
Okay, next slide. Oh, public outreach. We have this Saturday, we'll have some folks over at the Matarango Museum from 11 to 2. It's going to be fantastic. Thank you, Lauren and company who will be there. And
It's actually April, right? April 13th.
oh, April 13th. I'm sorry. Yeah, more typos from the general manager. This is what happens when engineers try to be English majors. Sorry. I did meet with the Republican Club in March, so I did get that one right. So sorry about that. So that was a great back and forth with the members of the Republican Club. Some of our board members are there. Nothing really significant to report on the social media aspect. We're still doing what we need to do on Facebook and Twitter and all our other social platforms. In the news media world, we did release our assessment of the latest court hearing to the paper. And, you know, Jim's already talked about the Navy rights that are to be determined at trial and the water district's position that the Navy is going to fairly get what they need to do their critical mission here in China Lake. And then the rest of us will figure out what to do with the water that remains and divide it up fairly. That's the American way. So next slide. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about regulatory updates in this meeting. So AB 1668 and 606, this is that conservation is a California way of life. There was a March 20th public meeting. I didn't watch the meeting, but I went through the slides that they had there and I wanted to give some updates to the board. So this regulation is being proposed to be adopted by the State Water Board, and the regulation will actually, it's going to be adopted as a regulation in January 2025. And then it goes into effect, the actual requirement. So there'll be like a couple of years of reporting, and then 2027, I'll get to this a little bit later, is when it actually, the limits are put into effect. So it does set rules for the following: indoor residential use, water loss, outdoor residential use, commercial, industrial. There's variances in there. And then there's a recycled water bonus if you have that potable recycled water that we're not going to have here. So on to the next slide. So like I said, the reporting will start in 2025 and the compliance is in 2027. Generally, the compliance, so we talked about this landscape efficiency factors. The LEF got pushed out another 5 years recently from 2030 to 2035. It was, it's going to be, and this landscape efficiency factor at 0.8 is kind of like if you're watering your lawn with sprinklers. As it goes down to lower numbers, it's more like drip irrigation. So the lower it gets, the more you have conservation of water. It gets reduced from 0.8, then down to 0.63, then to it should be 0.55, not 0.055, another typo. For residential, The commercial industrial with dedicated irrigation meters goes to 0.45 after 2035. Otherwise, it's the same as residential. So those are numbers that are now being proposed and are likely to be adopted. Next slide. And then, so what is interesting I found was there's a no backsliding provision. So we've talked a lot in here about, you know, our ability to increase our water usage over time and generally based on population growth, the regulation has provisions in there that are not going to let us to, you know, fall out of compliance and all of a sudden go up from, you know, where we're at today, which is essentially in compliance to a point where people are using more gallons per person or there's more irrigation. So we're not going to be allowed by the state to backslide and increase our water use per capita as time goes on. So one of the things I found, they had some interesting statistics there. They took their 2017 to 21 average use. So the average water district is going to need to see a 12% reduction in water from 2027 through 2035 to 2040. There are 4 water districts that are at above or above a 50% water reduction under this regulation. That is a huge reduction for those. Fortunately for us, the regulation says we are in compliance with the 2035 standards at 0.62 LEF, and that's with 20% I&I, that's the non-irrigated, non-irrigated land, and we're well above that as well. So we're probably looking pretty good even at the 2040 level. So more good news for us, not a lot of good news there for other people. Because of that lack of good news, they've pushed the regulation out and giving people more time and some more options. But these are things we don't necessarily have to spend a lot of time worrying about. But it's certainly important that we keep following what's going on here because our reporting requirements could start as early as 2025. Any questions?
Yeah, I just have one that, thank you for pulling that data together. It's very interesting. Are we in this process going to get credit for the accomplishments between 2007 and 2024? Or are they going to start us at 2024 and demand these reductions going forward? Do you have a feel for that?
Essentially, we've already achieved, so because these are based on how much per person uses, so we have a population and then each person, so essentially, we're not going to be required to do a lot more. We're already in compliance with the sort of use, you know, the per person use or the industrial use. So it appears that we are in compliance and will not be required to do more, which is a good thing. So all the good work that was done up to this point in the sense is the way it's paying benefits at this point in time is that we do not have to spend a lot more money to be in compliance with this regulation other than generate the reports that they need to show compliance.
Yeah, it's great news and should be received well by the public.
Let's
And
hope so.
thank the public for helping us achieve that because it wasn't the water districts. I mean, certainly we encouraged, but it was our customers that helped us achieve that.
Yeah, and that's why I point out the average water reduction, like the reductions at other water districts who weren't as proactive as this one, you know, they've got some real challenges. I would hate to be one of those guys who's looking at a 50% reduction. I don't know how you get there in 10 years. That's rough. So
I'd like to point out that we are near compliance of the 2035 regulations without using the swamp cooler variants, which is still something that the district can apply for.
yeah,
Nice.
so yeah, so we're doing, I mean, just fantastically well.
When this first came up, I was very concerned. I'm really glad to hear that we're already in compliance, even without the swamp cooler waiver,
Yeah.
which would have been a bookkeeping nightmare.
Yeah. And I pay attention to this because the state, they just in this last March meeting, they changed the rules. They could have made them more stringent. They didn't. Or they could have tightened the timeline. So, you know, this story is not yet over for us, but we are tracking it closely and to make sure that we're going to be where we need to be.
Thank you.
Next slide. Updates from the workshop. Wastewater project. Yeah, where we've talked about that future potential work for clean energy capital, LADWP. I am been tasked by President Kaczynski to get in touch with LADWP on potential releases in the coming year, and we are working on that as we speak. And as part of our larger budget planning, we are working on our priority project list for FY24 funding. If there are any specific questions, now would be the time.
Just a clarification, with the snowpack in this year, and all the additional rain over the last couple of years, it looks like it, it appears that the Department of Water and Power may have to return to dumping water along the aqueduct this upcoming year. And it would be good to catch that instead of just letting it spill onto the ground and put into storage.
Yes, I think the board knows that I am very much in favor of starting the research and the scientific studies to figure out how we can capture that, where it can be captured, what sort of engineering would need to be done, and I'm highly in favor of moving as fast as possible to figure those things out. Do I think we're going to get there for next year?
Probably
Given
not.
all of the regulatory hurdles it takes to get there, to build a large capture basin or build injection wells, or the ways to do it correctly, I can almost guarantee you we're not going to get there, but we are going to move aggressively to figure out, how we can do that in the future.
Okay,
George, is your trip still planned to visit that existing injection well?
El Paso, Texas.
We're going to have a conference, we're going to have a phone call with them this week. We've already set that up. And so we're going to discuss technicals. I got some feedback from our president that he wasn't necessarily in favor of us going out there en masse to visit and look, see. So I'm following that direction at this point.
And we need to follow up on any good news examples we can find.
Yeah.
okay.
And I believe that finishes my report. Any final questions?
I just had a quick question for Jim, related sort of kind of to this. Last year, when I went to the Aqua Conference before George was here and met with the representatives of the Metropolitan Water District, they announced that they were putting in a pilot plant for a massive water recycling, basically effluent collection and recycling project that's going to be commencing soon. And they had invited us to go see the pilot plant if we wished. And we ran into the Brown Act issues of how many directors could go together to go see something like that. But I think any director that wants to go should be able to go. Can you think about that and maybe get back with
Yeah,
me
no, I think
later?
we could arrange that. If, you're talking about like a board, what do you call those things? Field trip? Thank
Yeah,
you.
basically a field trip. We could see who wants to go, who can go. It'd basically be a day trip down. I
Sure.
mean, it's down into Southern California, pretty
Understood.
deep. So, and then,
Sure. I'll get further information for you on
all
that.
right, thank you very much.
Of course.
Okay, Northwest Transmission Pipeline.
I was going to say the Orange County one has a virtual tour you could also do.
Huh?
Yeah.
Cool.
They set those up once in a while. Okay.
I'm sorry, say that again, Renee?
They have a virtual tour that you can take also. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Northwest Transmission Pipeline. So I reported at P&E that we had just received the signed contract document. So we are under contract now with Nicholas Construction for that project. And we've been in contact with them, and we have been informed that it will take some time to get some of the supplies. So they're looking at end of June, beginning of July to mobilize. So around mid-June, we'll be having the pre-construction meeting, and we expect them to start submitting on items any day now. So that's where we're at. They don't expect that to cause a delay in the ultimate finishing of the project, though.
Okay. Yeah, the sooner they get the supplies, the better.
Yes. And we, as you guys know, the bond proceeds are ready to go and in our trust account, and also the money that we got from the state, the $3 million is also, we also have that
It's been
ready to go.
received, Bill. That's good news.
All been received. Yep.
Excellent. All right, any questions? All right. Dune 3 and Hometown Water Consolidations update.
All right, so the consolidations are going to be moving ahead. We have been informed by the state that we can now go for, they have like a round 5 of their expedited funding. So I was talking to the rep last week, and we're going to be working on getting that in. She sent me, we went over several lists of paperwork and things that still need to be finished up and uploaded to their online tracking system. So I'm going to be working on that this week and hopefully get both of those submitted. We're going to keep them separate. They talked about consolidating the projects and I'm like, no, we need to keep these two separate because one is larger and going to be bid out. One is going to be done by in-house staff. Hometown is a small project, so it won't take nearly as long as the other one. And then I'll be giving a similar update and more details about these projects at the Groundwater Authority meeting on Wednesday.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Questions? All right.
Look forward to hearing your presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Financial
Exciting.
status, please.
Okay, through March of 2024, we have revenues of 11,115,000, which is about $1 million below budget. 800,000 of that is a reduction in GA fees because we're not paying as much GA fees. But we are coming in behind on water sales. On the expenditure side, we have 12,448,000, which is 740,000 below budget. So our net's a negative 1,333,000, which is about 236,000 off budget, which is almost exactly the same amount as last month. So we haven't gotten any better, but we haven't gotten any worse. And we're tracking that as we go. Capital expenditures today, just under 2 million. Debt service principal, 833,000, and then total GA fees paid to date, $13,775,255.
All right.
Question.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious, this probably should have been brought up during the GA discussions, but what is the GA doing to, when they're losing 800K in revenue, what are they not doing with that loss of revenue? Are you aware, or is that something you can?
We
ask
have
about?
not discussed it. I mean, it's just going to be broken into their budget.
Yeah, I believe one of the interesting things is at this GA board meeting coming up in a couple of days, aren't they doing their financial audit from 2022, not
22.
2023? So it might be interesting to watch if you're curious about what they're doing with their budget. I'm not sure why their financial audit from 2022 took this long to get to the board. It might be interesting to see why.
Yeah, you're correct. That is on the agenda. So.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Conservation.
For calendar year 2024, we have 6 water waste reports received, 6 contacts made, 1 formal warning issued, and 1 penalty issued.
Okay. Arsenic treatment facilities.
So the plants are still offline. We are eagerly awaiting responses from both Pure Flow and Filtronics as to the delivery dates for the media. Pure Flow initially said that it would be May 1st, and all Filtronics has said is it's been delayed due to storms. So I don't have anything set in stone yet as far as the dates, and they're not giving me a lot of comfort with the lack of response. So, but that's, I have to, so we're gonna be up against the wall trying to get them online as soon as we can before the hot temperatures.
Okay. All right. All right, very good operations.
For the month of March, there were 6 repairs, 33 replacements, 35 valves returned, bringing the grand total to 95 for the year. No DES ran twice, bringing our grand total to 9.3 million gallons total of water saved.
Okay, thank you. Very good.
Can you, or do you know right offhand what percentage of the meters that have been sort of slated to be changed or updated have been done?
About 4,000.
No, I think we're hovering right around 3,000.
Okay,
We
and,
have 12,000 in the ground, so a little less than that, but.
oh, so we have 12,000 and we need to upgrade?
When we looked at the age of the meters, there's about 60% of all of our meters that needed to be replaced, which would be about 8,000. So we got 3,000 of 8,000 done.
3,000 of 8,000. Okay, well, we're making some progress though.
We are, yeah, and we get probably 20 to 30 done a week. That's
Okay.
about what time allows.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Well, very good. Yes, we have a caller. All right, go ahead, caller.
Yes, this is Renee West-Dolusk. I have a question for Mr. Stahili. When will we be getting to the point where we be breaking even, where the revenues and the expenditures will equal out? I mean, because we've started this new rate plan. I believe it started March of 2023. Is that correct? The new rate plan came into effect,
Yes.
and it's been over a year, and we haven't gotten to equilibration where revenues equal expenditures.
Right, right. The budget as approved anticipated a $700,000 expenditures over revenue. So that's something that was expected. And in the future should get better. We're looking at that right now as we do the budget to kind of anticipate next year where that's going to end and adjust accordingly.
Yeah, the rate increases were intended to be spread out across a couple of years.
Yeah, 5 years.
Right.
And then we also have the variable of, as we seen earlier, people are using less water. And so we budgeted on a larger scale of water and people have cut back. So it affects the budget. I mean, also.
Moving
Yeah,
target.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
moving target
Conservation's
constantly.
great unless you're the money guy.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I have a question for Jason Lillian, Operations Manager. So you said because the media that you need to, I don't know the process of how you use it in the arsenic treatment plants. I need to be educated on that, but because of that delay of the media being available to you, does that mean the arsenic treatment plants aren't going to go online till May?
The earliest they'll probably be online would be May. They're delivering, if they hold true to schedule, at the beginning of May. And we need time to load the media into the filter vessels, to disinfect the plant, and to run our system test to make sure that everything's ready to serve the public before we can put them online.
Okay.
So late May would be the earliest.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, was there any other comment? All right, then we'll go to board comments and future agenda items. Director Griffin,
No, I have none.
Director Boyd,
I have none.
Director Rotora.
I have none.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank members of the public who were here tonight in person and online. I appreciate that. And I want to thank the staff also for their professionalism and for their counsel. And with that, we're going to adjourn the meeting at 7:26. Well, 2 more seconds, 7:27 PM.
Good job, Prez. Our acting Prez. Right?
Oh, George, one of the things that happened last year regarding the audit is that the partner who did the 2021 audit kept asking for more information regarding what the replenishment fee really was and how it was being used.